Hello everybody, welcome to Rebel High Command Cast, a subsidiary of IA Command YouTube channel and an Imperial Assault podcast that dares to ask the question, is a game truly dead if we choose to not let it die? This is episode 3. I am your host TV Boy, aka Noah, and today I am joined by my co-host, TheSecondFlock, aka Wesley. Wesley, how you doing?
Hey, doing great. Beautiful Saturday morning for us.
Nice, awesome. Alright, well, today's episode we're going to be talking about all the different game modes in Imperial Assault. We talked about Skirmish in the last episode, pretty in-depth and why you should be playing Skirmish. And we thought today would be a good idea to kind of cover the rest of the game modes in Imperial Assault and talk about what the strengths and weaknesses of each one are and why they're interesting and maybe which one would be best for you as a player. So, but before we do that, let's talk about some games we played this week since our last episode. Wesley, have you played any Imperial Assault games?
I have not since last we recorded, but the last time we spoke, I did not go over a game I had done the night before, so we could get into that.
Yeah, what'd you do
I
the
think
night
I
before?
mentioned,
hmm
what's that?
Yeah, what'd you do the night before?
Yeah, so the night before we recorded last time, I did another match against one of our newer players, and I had built this 8 activation Royal Guard champion list and wanted to give that a try. Always being a fan of the brawlers and sometimes the Imperial stuff. And my opponent had a mismatch list playing a lot of different things. They had Han Solo, Sabine Wren, Ahsoka, Hera Syndulla, and Kotun Farrello, and then supported by R2 and 3PO. And then I think that heroic effort card. So I thought, okay, well, this newer player is doing a lot of mismatched things. I think I might have this in the bag, but let's see how it goes. We were on the Earthscrew Entertainment District doing the Rebel crate mission, the crate mission where you get VPs at the end of each round.
Mm-hmm.
And I start sending guys down the left, and my opponent, being newer, is not really sure how to position in round one, especially when we're waiting for these doors to open. And so he kind of sends players in both directions, and I try reacting to that. Near the end of the round, he activates Han and sends him over to the right, the opposite direction of where everyone else had been going. And I'm kind of worried about Han, so I send the Royal Guard Champion alone to the right. And when round 2 starts, I go in with Royal Guard Champion and Deep Strike. I'm able to get a Brutality off on Han Solo and I think Ahsoka, no, Kotun. And then at that point, when I declare the brutality, he asks if he is now allowed to play a card in his hand, and I realize I might have made a mistake. Because that for sure was on the lam. But I kind of helped him with the rules there, let him explain that I had to declare it against Han first. Got the Ahsoka attack off first, since that's who I planned to hit first anyways, or Kotun. But then Han goes to on the lam, and I go, oh, so I'm gonna miss this attack and get return fired. I don't know if parting blow in my hand would be the best reaction here, but it does seem fun, so I'm gonna parting blow. And I do, and I wind up spending a bunch of command cards in this multiple attempts to hit Han. I wind up doing 5 damage to him, but then he, takes a few steps back and shoots at the Royal Guard champion. He the big mistake here is that now Royal Guard champion is stunned. And also all of my other units are on the other side of the map. So it quickly turns into a round of all of my figures double moving into where they can get line of sight or get close enough to my opponent to hit them next round, while my opponent is kind of able to run around and take choice shots at whoever they want on my side. And I do throw a Purge Trooper in to cover the Royal Guard champion, and he dies, but because of the stun from Parting Blow, I don't get to use the Royal Guard champion's execute ability to run up and hit the attacker. And so the Royal Guard champion basically sits there for a round and a half until I get a chance to activate him again and go and get another couple hits in. In the end, I think we have an R2D2 try to run up and attack Callus when we're all running out of units. And that didn't work, but it inspired me to have my Imperial officer run up and shoot at the 11 damage Sabine and get the 1 damage to get the kill there. My opponent was not expecting that, and it denied him a couple of crates by doing that. And then I send Callus in to try to make an attack on Han. Just try to get enough damage on there. First attack does 3 damage. Han had healed some, so he had 5 total. So Han had 7 health. But Callus was able to focus, and from his own ability to draw a card, I'd drawn the last card of my deck, which was looking for a fight. And the only other card left in my hand is Parting Blow. So I'm able to get off this Parting Blow, looking for a fight combo, use the power token, use the focus. I roll 9 damage symbols with Han at 7 health, which means even if he gets a block evade with Cunning, it's going to be good. And I just say out loud, so this is where the dodge comes in, isn't it? And sure enough, Han gets the dodge, and we call it there.
Nice. Wow, that's cool. That's a good little bat rep there. Yeah, that interplay between On the Lam and Parting Blow is a pretty classic one actually from years ago. I mean, with when Vader and Han were the dominant two figures in the game, you had have that come up often, where Vader would come in and attack Han, and he'd have to consider whether or not Han had On the Lam, and then he would usually have Parting Blow, and so trying to catch Han on his way out with when he plays On the Lam uh, was a common thing you would see, and so it was became often a guessing game of, do I assume he has Lamb and hold off on playing, like spending my Thrawn token and playing um, what's it called, Death Blow, or
Hmm.
do I wait until he plays On the Lam and then use all those things on the Parting Blow attack and hope to maybe kill him? Because Vader could sometimes one-shot Han depending on his tokens and his reroll, or at least get close to it. So
Right.
yeah, yeah,
Yeah, I
that's
think
fun.
I think the mistake with Royal Guard Champion is you shut down his further abilities and movement. Like he has an out of round attack, which he's not going to get off if he's stunned. So
You
I
mean
think my
Vader?
lesson there was to not. No, Vader, you can stun him, but he can still force choke or do other things out of turn. And next turn you can unshakable and move him if you need to, or whatever you want to do. What I'm saying is Royal Guard Champion with his Executor ability, if you have a friend die,
Oh,
he can normally run up and attack. Can't do that if he's stunned. And I think that was a big part of the mistake there.
interesting. Yeah, I think of Champion usually more for his like um, his flurry
Hmm.
of blades thing and his parting blow tricks. But yeah, that's true. Executor does come into play sometimes.
Yeah, I think in the future I would try and parting blow with Mara and Callus first, since they're a little less extremely vital than Royal Guard Champion with his ability to move out of turn.
Yeah, that makes sense. Um, I had a game just last night actually. Played a late night game. I played against Josh, and we were playing for the week 3 of the league, the competitive league. I switched over to a heavy weapons saboteur list from the hunter list I've been using. I actually copied the list from Kyle from the tournament, so now I'm a dirty net lister. And I did switch a couple command cards around, but it was mostly pretty much the same. 2 Sabs, one with targeting computer, Kotun, Saw Gerrera, all that stuff. Mern. Um, and I played against Josh, and he was playing his like battle-tested double ISBs with Emperor Palpatine and Thrawn. Although I think Thrawn might have been a new addition. I don't remember him having it in his previous versions, but like this is like a list that he like won that tournament with a while ago, the Vassal tournament,
Hmm.
and it's very strong. It's very they all have generals ranks on them. So the 2 ISBs have general ranks, which is the one that gives them extra damage when they attack outside of their activation and extra move when they move outside their activation. And then he combos that with motivation on Palpatine. So he'll have Palpatine move. Um, he motivates one of the ISBs to move 3 spaces instead of one, next to general's ranks, and then he'll Emperor to have them attack, and then that sets it up so that the other, when the ISB actually activates, it's in position to do um, its normal attack, and then get a bonus attack from the other one with coordinated raid, and the other one can attack as well. Or I don't know how it works. It's like he moves one into position with motivation. The second one comes up, makes an attack, and then the one that got moved already attacks, and then does coordinated raid. Yeah, so he gets 3 attacks with his ISB infiltrators. So it's very scary. And the other thing is that you can't play any command cards while the
Did we lose you now?
Yeah, I think so. Can you hear me? Can you hear me now? Can you hear me? Mm, devices. Um, Voice and video. Can you hear me now?
Yes.
Okay. Yeah, I think I bumped my USB microphone connection. So we'll just edit
Okay.
that out.
Yep.
So
We lost you when you were describing how the ISBs could move three or get 3 attacks off after Palp moved them.
yeah, so then why is my audio so high now? There we go. Okay, so yeah, the other thing is they can um you can't play any command cards while they're activating. So you've got like these 3 ISB attacks coming in that are usually hidden, and you can't play any defensive command cards to try and blunt their attacks. So it's a very scary, very powerful list, and he knows how to use it because he's been using it for a long time. But we were playing on the Uskru map, the one with the control the stashes mission, and we set it up so that I was on the bottom, and we ended up where he split his ISBs. His ISBs went to the left, and then Thrawn and Palpatine went to the right by the terminal, and I was putting all my guys on the left side, so by the booth. But then right at the end, I had a plan where I double moved 2 of my saboteurs over to the right side to control the crates on the right side of the map, and then they would be there when the door opens to be able to attack Palp and Thrawn, with the goal being I wanted to kill Thrawn at the top of round 2 with initiative. So I ended up, we had this crazy sequence of die rolls where I had 2 Sabs attack Palpatine, who was right next to Thrawn, because I knew I could kill Thrawn. I would do more blast damage than regular damage, so I attacked Palpatine thanks to priority target on the saboteurs. And I also have heavy fire in the list. I have Saw Gerrera, and then in my hand I had collateral damage. And the Sabs were both. One of them was focused and had a surge token from Kotun, and the other one was hidden and had a surge token from Kotun. And I ended up being able to kill Thrawn with just those 2 saboteur attacks off of the blast by attacking Palpatine. But it got hairy at the end because in the second attack, Palpatine rolled a triple block, and he still had Zillow up. So I only had 2 damage showing, so I had to like calculate through all the possible Zillow activations and modifiers, and realize that even if I did Pierce 4, he would still be able to add a block and exhaust Zillow and not take any damage, and that would prevent all the blast I did. So I ended up needing to re-roll a yellow with targeting computer, and I got enough damage where I was able to do Pierce 4, Blast 2 after doing Blast 4 to Thrawn, so I brought him down to 3 health, and then I had to do Heavy Fire and collateral damage to kill him. Um, but because he rolled the triple block, I could have killed um, an officer with the collateral damage instead, but I lost out on that. And then we ended up fighting on the left side against all of his ISBs, and I got super lucky because my Kotun, thanks to being next to 3PO, survived 3 ISB attacks, one of which was focused, with just 1 health left. And then I Heart of Freedom to get her out of Palpatine tempt range, moved her up, managed to one-shot an ISB with Wild Attack, and then urgency back away to my deployment zone. So she lived, and then from there, that ISB hadn't activated yet, so that was a big tempo swing for me. And then, yeah, from there I managed to just kind of win on combat. But he was controlling the objectives like so well. He had his units positioned perfectly, not only so that he was always controlling the objectives, but that so that I couldn't move my figures to get next to them to contest them. So he was like, it was actually really close in points, but he didn't kill any figures. So just because the luck of the dice really kind of went my way.
Yeah.
And yeah, so that one was pretty crazy. I don't know if that's going to go up on YouTube yet. I'm not sure if I'm going to post that one, but um, he played really well too. He had a moment where um, he positioned all his ISBs on the left side in a way that they were in like a checkerboard formation. So there was one and it had like 3 next to it. Or no, it was one that had 2 next to it, 2 adjacent, and it was very tempting. And I almost didn't go through with my plan of going to the right side to take out Palp and Thrawn, or to take out Thrawn. And I thought, oh, maybe I should just focus on these guys on the left and try to take out all 3, or take out 2 of them with blast. At the start of round 2 instead of going to the right. But then at the last minute, he moved the middle one out of out of the center of that formation. So I was like, oh, good. I'm really glad I did that because there was nothing to blast at that point. But he almost got me with that like little presentation of like, look at these 3 figures next to each other. Don't you want to blast them? And I'm so glad I didn't quite take the bait on that. But yeah, that was the match I played. Really fun. I love Sabs. I just love doing all that blast damage. It's very explosive and kind of speaks to the Timmy in me. But yeah, do we want to
Yeah.
move? Oh, and go ahead, Wesley, if you had anything you want to say about that.
I just thought it was interesting how you were, when you had activated Kotun and you played Heart of Freedom, you did that in part to get Kotun out of tempt range. And I think that tempt is one of those abilities that, at least for me, I see in general people don't really think too much about it until it's the Imperial player's turn to activate Palp, and he's just looking for which figure has 1 health.
So I have a little secret about that actually. I didn't realize I did had gotten her out of tempt range until after the game when Josh told me. I just did it for the movement points,
Right.
and I happened to recover. I almost didn't do it, and then I moved her, and then I moved her back, and I said, I'm going to play Heart of Freedom, and Josh was like, okay. And I just was like, I just want the movement because I want to kill that ISB that's like 2 spaces away from
Right.
that she needed to get to. And I had looked at like the damage. I had was looking at the dice and I was like, I can actually one shot this if I get decently lucky and he doesn't roll. Because she had a power token to give herself, so I didn't have to worry about dodges. Because he'd be rolling 2 white dice, and he actually rolled a blank and a dodge, so it was pretty much a blank. And I had to re-roll the one red, because again I'm always thinking about Zillow, and when you're playing against an Empire player in skirmish, that's something you really have to always be thinking about. You're always thinking about Zillow because
Mm,
it informs your rerolls, it informs what kind of mods you use or cards you play. And if you don't, 'cause you have to do all of that before the Zillow player does their Zillow stuff, and adds a block. So you have to
right.
do that ahead of time. You have to be thinking about it ahead of time. You can't react to it. The Zillow player gets to react, which is what makes it so powerful. And
Mhm.
so, um, yeah, at that point I was looking at the die roll and I was like, oh, this is 7 exactly. and I was like, does he just die? And then I'm like, oh no no, Zillow, so I have to re-roll. Um,
Right.
which is scary because he had not played Tough Luck yet, and I get very nervous about Tough Luck now when I re-roll because it's gotten so much more common. Um,
Yeah. Yeah, we are seeing that a lot.
but it killed him. So anyway, but yeah, so I just wanted to say that the attempt play was completely by accident. I also told Josh he was running Smuggling Compartment,
Hmm.
which goes really nicely with Thrawn. He was telling me Thrawn's ability to manipulate the top of both players' decks. And I told him if I had drawn either of my spy cards, I would have played them right into your smuggling compartment because I was not thinking about it at all. Um, and I have not gotten got by it yet. Like, you know how like you play against something and you get got by it, and then you never
Right.
get got by it again, right? I've not
Right.
had the pleasure of getting got by smuggling compartment. I've only seen it happen to other people. But I feel like now that I have like realized I would have gotten got by it, I know that I'm not going to in the future. I'm gonna see it and be like, oh, don't get got by that. don't play.
We had a four-player game for that one league several months ago. One person was playing spies, but myself and one other player had smuggling compartment. So all the spy cards went to the one unfortunate soul that wasn't running smuggling compartment.
Oh, wow, that sucks.
Yeah.
Oh, one more thing that happened that was interesting because again, I don't know if this is gonna go on YouTube, but we had a moment where his ISB went to activate and played urgency, and I looked at it and I saw, well, he needs that to get line of sight to Kotun, but if he doesn't, he can still attack R2. And so I decided to play Calm Disrupt on it. I had been saving my Calm Disrupt until this, thinking it would be like saving it for a more critical card, and I thought, okay, this is it. Um, so I played Calm Disrupt on his urgency, and he was thinking for a minute. So I knew I really disrupted his plans, right? Because he like goes back in the tank and he's trying to think about what he's gonna do now, and then he comes back and he says, "Wait, you can't play that." Because ISBs, they have that ability, and it's during their activation. You can't
Oh,
play command
activation.
cards.
Ooh.
So all of their command cards are unnegatable during their activations. You couldn't negate either, which for some reason, it always came up that that was just like a anti-defensive tech, right?
Yeah.
It's like that's something that comes up when they're attacking. It's for some reason, I think it's come up before, but it's just not been so long since it's happened. It just totally blanked on me that you can't negate or calm disrupt them during their activation. So that was pretty. I thought that was actually pretty cool, and I mean, you know, a little bit of a play mistake by me, but Josh caught it thankfully, and I'm glad he did because that was a big moment in the game. So I'm glad he did catch that. But just something to think about, like if you're playing ISBs, like you don't have to worry about your movement cards getting disrupted by your opponent.
Yeah. Yeah. ISPs seem really good for that.
They're definitely a high skill figure group. Like they're fun and they're strong, but you do need to like really position them correctly. So like I know like Josh is really good. I think he's got some games up on YouTube with that list, and then Kyle was using them really well. He was doing the Death Trooper plus covering fire trick instead of wait, what is that? What is it called? Not covering fire, suppressive fire.
Right.
Instead of Palpatine
Yeah.
motivation, so he would put suppressive fire on a Death Trooper. He would have the Death Trooper activate use suppressive fire to move an ISB up into position, and then when the ISB activated, it was in position to do the thing where the second one moves up, attacks, and then the first one can attack and do coordinated raid with both of its actions. So, okay, well, I think we've talked enough about that. Um, all right, so we'll do some housekeeping here and go over some of the weekly community updates that have come in. All right, latest updates in Imperial Assault news for the week of September 26th, 2022. First is a small update from the Imperial Commander 2 app. They have made an announcement that in their upcoming fall update, there is going to be a campaign tracker that's added. So this is a way for you to track your progress in your campaigns. It can be your regular campaigns or the ones you're doing in the app. So that's going to allow you to track all your progress through your campaign, including your heroes, your XP, your credits, etc., what missions are active, all of that stuff. So that's pretty cool. And then in bigger news, we've posted the tournament full lists from the September 10th Vassal tournament for all the lists that went 2 wins or better. So the full lists have been posted up there. And then the biggest news that I waited to post this for was the official documents page on the IACP website has been updated. First thing you'll notice is that we have downloaded and backed up all of the FFG rules documents, so all of the official FFG rules PDFs, the most recent versions of each one. We've uploaded it to the IACP Google Drive and made them available to download from anyone, so in case the FFG page ever goes down, you'll have all of these rules available. We've also linked Posse's consolidated rules, which is really helpful. The other big update is the Season 7 official changes and FAQ has been updated for the Season 7 approved play period. There's been a lot of FAQs added. You can see all the new stuff that's been added in this version will be highlighted in blue. You can see that there's a lot of cards that have gotten either updated or new FAQs added. But the thing that I am most excited about is that now all of the images in the document are hyperlinked. So when you go to the PDF, you can click on any of the thumbnails and it will open a larger version of the image. It will make it a lot easier to use this document to read all the IACP cards. A lot of them are quite small, and some of these, these command cards are not too difficult, but once you get to some of the, especially the older IACP cards that came out, the text can be a little small to deal with when you're looking at it at that size. So now there is a much easier way to do it, to click on it and look at it that way. So definitely check it out if you're an IACP player. Also check out all the FAQs that were updated as well. Okay, we're back. So now we're going to go into a segment I call Comms Chatter. So this is where we'll go over maybe an interesting comment or something, a message or something that somebody sent to the podcast, either through the YouTube channel or through email. So if you want to have your comment featured, leave a comment down below if you're looking at the YouTube video, or send an email to iacommand01@gmail.com, and I'll read your message over the air if it's appropriate and reasonable. And so we had one comment on last week's episode on YouTube, and I just wanted to share this. It's kind of a nice comment. So last week's episode was why people should give Skirmish a try if they haven't already thought about doing so. And we had a comment from Giokami who says they love these podcasts. Thank you. And they just recently got their friend to try Skirmish, and now their friend is asking when they can play Skirmish again. So I thought that was great. Glad to hear that our Skirmish evangelizing has been successful, or that other people are being successful in getting their friends to try Skirmish, because it's a ton of fun.
Yeah, it definitely is.
Okay, so now let's move on to the rules question of the week. So this is where we take a look at rules question from the community that we thought was interesting. And I have a rules question that's actually for campaign instead of for Skirmish, but it has implications for Skirmish, so Skirmish players should pay attention and take note of this one. So the question was, in campaign, and let me bring up the Board Wars card database because I want people to be able to see this ability. So in campaign, when you're playing Onar Koma, can his rush ability be used during deployment? Because it says when a friendly figure, what is it? When the watermark's covering the image. When you enter a space adjacent to a small figure, you may push that figure up to one space. Limit once per activation. So the question is, during deployment, all the rebels enter the battlefield at the same time onto the deployment point. So technically, Onar is entering a space adjacent to another hero. So can he use Rush during deployment to push that hero before round one starts? And the relevant rule here that prevents this from happening is that it says any ability that says limit once per activation, you can only use that ability during an activation. So Rush can only happen when an activation happens, and that also means that if like um, is it when he enters a space? Oh yeah, it doesn't matter when Imperial figures enter spaces adjacent to him, but um, if he was like moving between activations, like if he was moving during the status phase for some reason, he wouldn't be able to use Rush as well.
Right. Um, I'd actually not considered the implication of doing it on spawn. Um, when I read through this question, I was considering someone maybe had Hera as an ally that they were bringing in and using that to give Onar a movement point to then try to rush somebody else. But
Yep.
that limit activation still seems like a cap on that.
Yeah, and I believe that was a rule that came up because of another hero, which was Drokata. So,
Does she have a deployment move?
no, but she has her demolish ability. There's no timing window on it. It's just like it just has a strain cost and then tells you what to do, like to place the token. So when she first came out, people were like, "Well, this doesn't say during your activation, so can you just do this like whenever?" Um, I think that actually did get errated, so it's during her activation, but like you can't just do it during any activation. Um, I guess it's not a good example because this one doesn't really explain why you can only do it during Drokata's activation. But I'm trying to find one um, that's in Skirmish that would be applicable here because I thought there was. I think like ISB infiltrators have that ability. Nope, somebody does. But anyway, it is relevant
Uh,
to.
Element of surprise might be one.
Oh yeah, that might be. Well, that's right because that one is. It's not have lines to at the
Because if
start of your
you
activation. Yeah, that one's weird
Mhm.
because it says your activation, but you can actually use it during any activation. But you have to use it
Right.
during an activation. So that one's a little bit weird.
But if you get an end of round attack with Han Solo off or Darth Vader, they're not going to be able to play element of surprise, even if they get a movement into position or something like Call the Vanguard, letting you move and then attack, because it is not currently anyone's activation when you do these things, and so element of surprise doesn't have an activation window to reference on whether you started it or not in line of sight to that figure.
Right, exactly. Um, it is also relevant for abilities that say once per round, which I think there's like just a couple that are relevant, but like, because I think this came up with Bib Fortuna where it was like once per round. I'm trying to think what it was. I can't remember, but if ability says once per round, you can't use that ability before a round starts. So like during setup. So kind of a similar rule there. So anyway, yeah, I thought that was the most interesting one we saw, and it was for campaign. So that was interesting.
Yeah, definitely nice.
Okay, well, should we jump into our main topic here?
Yes.
All right, so we're going to be talking about the different game modes in Imperial Assault, which there are quite a few now. When the game came out, it had two. It had campaign and it had skirmish, uh, and so it's diversified quite a bit thanks to both FFG changing things around and fan-made modes coming out.
Although, to be honest, it's just more skirmish modes and more campaign modes.
Right. Um, Although I think the app mode is pretty different from campaign in a lot of ways, but we'll get into that in a moment here. So um, I'll just list off the ones I have just so we can get kind of a bird's eye view, and then we'll jump in to them. So again, to list them, we have skirmish mode, traditional skirmish mode. We have the IACP version of skirmish, which is kind of its own thing at this point. Same rules as skirmish, but different card pool. We have multiplayer skirmish, which is mostly four-player skirmish, which has its own rule set. However, there is also fan-made maps. I've made a couple for three-player skirmish. Then there's campaign, the traditional campaign mode that comes with the core box that people are pretty familiar with, I think. Then we have the Legends of the Alliance app campaign, which is pure co-op. Next we have the print and play co-op sort of automated fan-made mode, which is the Red Jack's automated Imperial or Emperor variant. So it's RAIV or RAEV, and that's a printed custom set of rules that are meant to automate and simulate the Emperor player during a game, or at least make it so you can play against it without an Emperor player. And then finally we have Imperial Commander 2, which is the Imperial Commander app, which is sort of a fan recreation of the Legends of the Alliance app, combined with like digital version of the RAIV RAEV system. It has two different game modes. So I didn't list it here, but there's also some more custom variants that are a little bit too niche for what I wanted to get into. But like, I know they play a lot of Hunger Games over in Britain. In England, they have a variant where they make this big custom map and they use campaign heroes, and it's like a free for all, and there's like stashes stashed around the map, and people take turns and they're running around and they can attack each other, and it's Hunger Games, like it says. I think
Sounds like something we're sleeping on.
there's a PDF floating around out there with the rules that you could probably find. It's not something I've ever done or seen played, so I can't really speak to it, but I know they really enjoy it over there in the British Isles.
And I think we also left the raid missions out of this list, right?
Oh, that's right, and we will cover that. So I'll put that under Legends of the Alliance.
Right.
That is an important one. Thank you for reminding me. Um, yeah, were there any other like custom modes that you're aware of that maybe we should just shout out?
I don't think so. I was surprised to learn about Hunger Games.
Okay. Um, so let's just briefly talk about Skirmish since we already talked about it in the last episode. So definitely check that out if you guys are interested in learning more about Skirmish. But oh, that's why my mic is so low. There we go. Yeah. Oh wow, that's really loud. So Skirmish is, for those that don't know, it comes with the core box. It's basically you're taking the deployment cards from campaign, as well as special deployment cards that are just for the rebels instead of using their campaign heroes, and you are playing on special maps just for skirmish. You use the deployment cards. You build an army of 40 deployment points, and you build a command deck out of the command cards, 15 cards with 15 points, and then both you and your opponent will deploy in the deployment zones listed on the map. You play the objective, and it's symmetrical. First player to get to 40 points scored, a combination of either killing your opponent's figures or scoring the objectives, wins the match. So it's a head-to-head competitive mode, and it's a lot of fun. If you're a competitive player, or you only have two people, or you want a more symmetrical game mode, we kind of talked about all of this. Skirmish is a really good game for you. If you're interested in being in part of a larger community, Skirmish is also a great option because I mean, the campaign people talk about campaign, but you can really get into the skirmish community online and get skirmish games played. I think a lot easier than it is to try to find an online group to do a campaign online. But yeah, any comments on skirmish?
Yeah, I think when we look at how long it takes, skirmish is going to be the quickest. Putting aside the setup and teardown, which every mode is going to have its own version of. But you play a round of skirmish, you're not dedicating to several missions. And I do see that in campaign, the later missions where people get more and more abilities, it takes longer and longer to sort out what people are going to do. So I think when you want something quick, easy, skirmish is going to be the way to go.
Yep.
It's also got so many maps that you don't have to just play the competitive ones if you want to. I think there's one where you have Han Solo and Carbonite in the middle of the map. Definitely not competitive, but there is some kind of 10 VP objective in the middle. But if you want to play that, go ahead. You can. There are so many missions that are just off the walls, not balanced, but look like a lot of fun to try to interact with in skirmish. So you still get that kind of campaign element of interacting with something new, doing something unique and crazy in the game, if you want to deviate from a normal competitive mindset and just do a casual fun game.
Yeah, there is definitely a lot of variety available in skirmish missions. I think also, like, if you're someone who's played campaign a lot and you've played through all the campaigns and you played through everything, like, skirmish is the game type that keeps on giving. It really is like the highest variety within similar playthroughs, because every game, it's like chess, right? Every game is going to be different. You're going to have different lists each time, or somebody might have different lists each time. um, and it's always going to play out slightly differently. And you're going to be able to make stories from, like, even if you're playing on the same missions over and over, you're going to have different stories each time you play that are generated by the players rather than by the game mode itself. So I find that skirmish is the most rewarding for the long-term player that just wants to keep playing and jamming games. Um, it's really nice that way. Like, you play through a campaign and then you play it again. You're like, okay, I know what happens. I know the story. I know what's behind that door. I know what is going to happen in this mission. It loses some of that replayability each time you play a campaign again. But not so with skirmish. With skirmish, it's like you're always playing against the other player across from you, not against the scenario for the most part. So you're like, what are they going to do this time? What strategies did my opponent come up with? Or if you're playing against someone new, like, how does this person play the game? What are they going to do? How are they going to play this map? And maybe they're playing it in a way you've never seen before. So yeah, sorry, I don't want to get too much into why skirmish is awesome, but I forgot to say that in the last episode.
Yeah. I mean, to summarize your idea here, we have three maps and we're stuck with them for 4 months at a time in this community, and we never run out of new stories to tell on those three maps.
Yeah, right. And what Wesley's referring to is that in tournament play, there are three designated maps each rotation that are tournament maps, and those change every 17 weeks, so that's 4 months. And right, like you said, infinite variability and replayability.
Right.
Okay, but let's move on to multiplayer skirmish, which we didn't. I don't think we talked about it all in the last episode. Where did that image go? I wanted to bring up this four-player map, but multiplayer skirmish is. Come on. Sorry, I'm struggling with my search engine. Multiplayer skirmish is you have four players instead of two, and you can. Here we go. You can play either as a team, so 2v2, or you can play as a free for all, and both are a lot of fun. Do you have any experience with multiplayer skirmish?
Yep, just two times so far. I haven't gotten into teams yet, but it has been a couple of four-way matches. And I think that the different maps play very differently, but what's most fun is the politics that you're allowed to get into when you have a four-player match. When you have abilities that say, attack one enemy or pick one opponent and do this to them, and then you have someone go, well, if you don't use that ability against me, I promise not to attack you next round when you're vulnerable. And then you've got to make a decision there. But whatever you do, you might turn two or three other people against you.
Yeah, that's interesting. I've not seen the politics come into play, although I imagine it would be a thing. Um, because I'm a big like commander player in Magic, so I love four-player free-for-alls. I love the politics. I do find I think in four-player, because you're geographically positioned next to other players, there's less opportunities for like, well, don't attack me and I'll do this for you, because well, they can only really choose one other person to go after, right? So it's not like they have free access to everybody on the table, but it is cool when it does happen.
Yeah. I think
Um,
my first map I was playing Wookiees and I had a line ambush set of Wookiee warrior elites, right? And they're gonna drop in someone's deployment zone in the middle of round two. End of round one, one of my opponents, who was looking like a good target for line ambush, uh, activated HK-47 and basically said, "Okay, if you promise not to put your line ambush Wookiees in my deployment zone, I will not make you discard a card right now with HK, and he won't attack you." And I really wanted those cards, so I agreed to it. And half a round later, the whole situation had changed. He is now very much the best person to put the lion ambush in. And it then comes to the question of, do you keep your reputability or do you just do what's best for you in the moment and know that no one's going to trust you later? Because no matter what deals you make, you can always go back on them. Nothing in the rules is going to hold you to that word. So there's always that tension and drama of, is he going to go through with it?
right, absolutely. Um, and there, for those who are wondering, there's no official three-player map variants, but there are some fan-made ones, including I've made a three-player variant, like three-player map that you can try and play on, and it's been somewhat play tested by the community. And you definitely want a three-player map if you're going to play with three-player skirmish, because if you play three players on a four-player map, one of them is going to get ganged up on just by the way the deployment zones are arranged, so it doesn't really work. Um,
Devereaux and Garrison might make a good three-player map if you put the third deployment zone in that green area
yeah,
over to the right.
I've heard people suggest that. I've heard Andor Defense Station suggested as another one. I wish these were labeled on this, but there's a couple of like one-player maps, but yeah, you can probably do that. So Endor Defense Station and Deveron Garrison are ones to think about trying. Okay, so that's four-player skirmish. Next we have, okay, so campaign. I mean, those are the kind of oh, you know what we forgot to talk about? ICP skirmish. So that's the next one we should mention. So I mean, if you're listening to this, you're probably pretty familiar with IACP, but if you're coming in looking, you're not super familiar, what IACP is it's the IA Continuity Project. Um, so this is a community organized attempt to rebalance the skirmish mode. For those that don't know, the original skirmish for FFG, it had some of its own internal balance, like it found an equilibrium, but a lot of the cards were just not playable in skirmish. In the competitive mode, I would say like over 2/3 of the cards in the original skirmish game are just not playable, which is a shame because that includes a lot of like iconic characters and iconic troop types. So the idea behind ISCP was to bring those cards back into the fold competitively to open up more options, but also to keep adding new figures to the game in absence of FFG, discontinuing it. So FFG no longer supports Imperial Assault. They're not releasing new content. They're not releasing any new figures for Skirmish, which is hard when you're like a competitive game. These types of games rely on a constant feed of new content to keep spicing up the meta, to keep giving people new options to play with and make it interesting. Because otherwise, you just start playing the same lists over and over that were the best lists at the time. The meta gets solved. So the IACP, the idea is these are all play tested pretty rigorously, both internally and publicly through a public playtesting forum. Um, and you get really cool figures that you don't have in the base game, like the Mandalorian. The Mandalorian's is in IACP as a card that you can play in Skirmish. So are like IG-11. So are like Cassian, Andor. Um,
Cad
some
Bane.
Cad Bane is in here. Um, and there's no like official figures that have been released for these that you can buy from ICP. ICP is totally fan made and free. That's important to note, is we don't make any profit on this project. It's all done as a service to the community, to the Imperial Assault community, and so you can't buy anything from us, and we won't take your money. But if you look around, you can find figures that correspond to a lot of the stuff in ICP, especially like Star Wars Legion. They're actually behind us a lot of the time. We're actually ahead of them in terms of getting stuff into the game, because we don't have to deal with Lucasfilm.
Sure.
Um, and they do. But like Cassian is released, and he has a Legion figure. Just recently, I think they did IG-11 and Mandalorian came out with Legion figures. So, and then some of the stuff is not like Bib Fortuna, but if you look around on like Etsy, you can find a lot of custom miniatures that you can use to replace these. And of course, ICP plays. We play a lot of games online, mostly because of the pandemic, forced a lot of play online. So that's where a lot of our presence is. But we're trying to expand to more in-person play. So stay tuned on that for more organized play support for in-person play. And then finally, ICP is really the current way to play Skirmish. If you're looking for like vanilla FFG, there's no online community for that I have seen where people are actively playing that version of Skirmish. So if you're looking to get into like the living version of the game where people are actually playing it and talking about it, ICP is pretty much that from what I've seen.
Yep, definitely. And if you're apprehensive about dealing with a million new figures and cards all at once, or if you're new to the game, I wouldn't worry too much about that. Just go in with a good spirit, throw some characters you like together. Hopefully, IACP cards, you find those and they're a little more playable if you've got some figures that really weren't in FFG. You find someone to play against, the community is really nice and welcoming, whether online or in person. You find someone and you play out a few matches and then you learn what else exists in IACP.
Yeah, and if you're if
Getting beat by
you're
it.
yeah, if you're a vet, like if you are familiar with the skirmish cards from the original game, like yes, we've changed a lot of them, but if you really look at them, you'll be like, oh yeah, this looks like pretty familiar to what it used to do. Like a lot of times it'll be hard to even spot what the differences are because they're pretty subtle in a lot of cases. But and then if you're like brand new to the game and it looks overwhelming, it's really not that much different from coming into any like lifetime legacy game. Like imagine coming into a game like Magic that's like 30 years old, right? Like you've got 15,000 cards. Same for anything like, you know, any of those card games or like Warhammer. Those games are so old. They have so many cards and stats and units that are also all changing constantly. So you just like you said, like Wesley said, just kind of if you're interested, there's a lot of fun to be had, and it's way more balanced than the original skirmish game. There's so much variety and diversity. Like you can really play anything you want, and it's probably going to be viable. And as far as like getting your feet wet, you just got to dive in and kind of like just browse around. Like you don't have to figure it all out at once. You just kind of look at it card by card and be like, oh, this is neat, or this is cool, or I wonder if this character's in here. Oh yeah, there they are, and put them in a list and play around with it. You don't have to be a master at all at once right from the very start. You kind of just grow and you get into it.
Right.
So that's my rant. Um,
And good to know. The four-player games I have played have been with the IACP format, so you can definitely do that as well.
yeah, I should mention that IACP has not changed any rules. I mean, we've added some rules for like new card types and stuff like that. But all of the core original rules are still the same. That's been a founding tenet of IACP is like same game, new cards. We don't want to change the game the way it was played because then it's not the game that people fell in love with. So yeah, I'm a big fan of IACP. If you can't tell. So moving on, so that covers all the skirmish games modes, and now let's talk about campaign. So campaign um, is a one versus many mode. I'm trying to figure out what I want to put up on the screen for that. um, it's one versus many. It's multiple games played in succession with the same components and the same figures and the same people. You have one player who is the Empire player that plays as all the Imperial minions and troops, and they are controlling the mission parameters, or at least guiding the players through the mission parameters. And then you have 1 to 4 players playing as the Rebel heroes, who are have these hero sheets that I'm trying to put up on the screen that have uh, their main abilities and attributes, and they have you have to equip weapon cards to attack. It's quite a bit different from skirmish, but it uses a lot of the same core rules like movement and dice and line of sight, etc. Um, there's like you get XP similar to a dungeon crawler. I mean, it is a dungeon crawler, but similar to like an RPG. The heroes get XP, as does the Imperial player, and you can spend it on getting new skills for your hero, and the skills are specific to each hero. So you can't. It's not like a class based like Descent is. It's like each hero has their own set of upgrade cards that they can spend XP on. You also get money at the end of each mission, so you can buy items and weapons, and so everybody's growing and getting stronger through each mission. And campaigns last between 4 missions, which is an accelerated campaign called a mini campaign, or up to 10 missions, sometimes 11, depending on like extra force missions and stuff like that. And the side, it's competitive, so it's the rebels versus the Empire, and whoever wins the final mission, regardless of who won all the other missions, is the winner of the campaign. Um, so yeah, that's campaign in a nutshell. Wesley, what do you think about vanilla campaign?
Yeah, I think it actually can go up to 14 missions if you do enough forced missions, which is long. I think campaign is good. There is a little interplay here of depending on what kind of players your group are. If your DM, your dungeon master type player, your overlord, whether he's going to play this like a game that's competitive where it's you versus him, or what I see more often is, newer players, they just want to throw dice against the table and get together and have fun. And the DM player plays it more like a dungeon master of a role-playing game would, where they say, okay, well, I'm gonna throw some stormtroopers at you. I'm gonna do all these cool, crazy events. Once in a while, Darth Vader's gonna show up and be scary, but I'm not going to look at the mechanics and try to exploit them to uh, dominate you guys. I'm gonna try and make some interplay back and forth, make it challenging, but try to get you guys to be the heroes of the game. And there's been so many threads on the interplay there of which kind works for each group. Noah, did you have something to add to that aspect?
Yeah, I mean, like you said, I've seen it played both ways, where usually you see people talk about like you want to just be a DM, you don't want to be like an enemy of the players. God, why isn't the PDF not working? I just want to put this campaign log up so people can see. Um, this is like a sample campaign. Um, and I've seen also people who just want to play competitive, like they want to really go all out and push the system to its limits and be like, what can I put together that's like really powerful, and which is something that people enjoy. Is some people just exploiting a game system to see how far they can push it and if they can break it, because then you get to be powerful. It's what do you call it?
Right.
I think it's called munchkining in like
Yeah.
role playing games. So you can totally be a munchkin. No, I guess uh, that's where you put all your stuff on one character. So maybe that's not the right word. I guess min-maxing would be
Yeah.
technically correct. Um, and there's some broken stuff in campaign that you can do. So, if you're looking for a competitive experience, I do have to say Skirmish is probably what you're looking for, but it is there in campaign if you want to pursue it. Um, it is a competitive mode. Like let's make no bones about this. Like this is a competitive game mode of one side wins and one side loses. It's a zero-sum game. It's not a co-op game. It is, and you can have teams on both sides. I've seen people do this too, where they split up more evenly and they have two players playing on the Imperial side, and one player controls like the cards and one player controls the figures, and they split it up, or they have each controlling certain deployment groups, which can be sometimes it works, sometimes it doesn't, because sometimes you have just an entire deployment group wiped out before it gets to activate, since rebels always activate first in campaign.
Right.
um, but that's been more of a way to like make it more of a, like, I don't know, equal experience. Whereas the Empire player generally is thought to have an advantage, unless the Rebel players are very experienced and really know what they're doing. Because the Empire player has all the knowledge of the game, they usually own the game, so they are more knowledgeable of rules and strategies, and they get to plan more for each mission, because they're supposed to look at the mission ahead of time to set it up. Which means that, of course, they have access to the information. They also know all of the hidden information in each mission, whereas the rebels are kind of flying blind, and they have to react to things that are surprises, and they don't get to really plan for things. So it's very imbalanced. It's not a balanced competitive experience, but it's a lot of fun because you get to watch either your character grow or your powers as the Empire player grow as you go through the campaign, and you get to do some really cool stuff as either a hero or controlling the armies of the Empire.
Now, if you do have five people in your gaming group, I think this is going to be the way to go. There's not too many bones around it, unless you want to just throw a fifth hero onto the rebel side and play one of the other modes we're going to talk about next and unbalance things a little bit. But traditionally, if you're going to do it that way, 2 to 5 players, uh, it it would be best, I think, in a lot of situations. Like you said, Noah, it is sold and marketed and created as a competitive asymmetrical experience. But I do see a lot of posts where people tend to want to treat it more like a D&D game, or like, go soft on their players and make sure they're having a good time, which I think it is another valid way to play, as long as you keep in mind that it's not the way that it's sold to be played or created to be played.
Yeah, I think that's the correct way to play, especially, but when you're playing with new rebels, like if you're an Imperial player trying to get people to play this game with you, if the rebels are new or if it's their first campaign, you really do kind of want to just softball it to them. Like it can become very demoralizing when they're getting crushed, and it tends to snowball as well as the other problem with campaign. Like the winner gets more prizes than the loser, so each mission, and that's the whole point, right? Is you're winning these missions so you can be more powerful than the other side in the finale, and so it tends to snowball though, where whoever won the last mission, they're going to be more powerful in the next mission, and then they're probably going to win that one, and then so on and so forth. So there's actually a lot of house rules to help prevent that, but you can look those up online. I think one of the creators made it so like if you win like your third game mission in a row, like then both sides get the winning prizes.
Yeah.
The other thing is I wanted to say, you mentioned, yeah, if you have 5 players, campaign is really the only option. And you can even add more players through the use of like allies,
Mhm.
or like I said, having like 2 people on the Empire team. That's another way to do 6 players if you have 6. But although I tell people, like, if you have that many players, just run a skirmish tournament. Like, what are you doing? Why are you playing
Yeah.
campaign? But of course, campaign's awesome, so of course people want to play campaign. Um, but you can also, you don't need 5 to play, is something I should mention, and you don't need to use the alternate player count cards. So the campaign will tell you if you have less than 5 people, you should use um, you should have each player take 1 hero, and then they have these like upgrade cards where if you have 3 rebel heroes, it's called heroic.
Heroic.
So you still have 4 activations, but you pass 1 activation token between the heroes and they get more health. And then same thing if you have 2 rebel heroes, it's like legendary, so you have 2 activations per hero, and they get like a ton more health. Um, General consensus is that is not a balanced way to play the campaign. It messes with a lot of the what very little mission balance there actually is when you have heroes that can basically move 4 times. Have 4 actions effectively. It screws up some missions against the Empire, and like when you have um, when you have only 2 heroes, but the mission is balanced for having 4 heroes in 4 different places, that can also really mess up the balance against the rebels. So it just messes things up in general. So you want to have 4 heroes um, every time you play, and then you just split them up between the players. So if you have 3 players, you would have 4 rebel heroes, and maybe you make one of them, the donkey mule that is healing everybody or carrying or doing like opening doors or whatnot. Usually one hero ends up having to be that anyway, so it kind of sucks to be that player in a campaign. So sometimes it's better to just have that be like the designated, workhorse character.
Yeah.
And then if you have players, 2 rebel players, you give them 2 heroes each.
Yeah. I recently ran a campaign with 3 real humans playing. That's a weird way to say it, 3 players. But they opted to go with the heroic route, and about halfway through the campaign, they had lost 3 of the 4 games. And I said, "Hey guys, I think you're gonna have a better time if you create a donkey mule fourth guy that you all control." Because yeah, you can have more people in more places, and I think in most cases the Empire benefits from seeing only 3 or 2 heroes on the map. Like there are some cards that affect a hero for an entire round,
Mm.
and you can put that on the hero that has 2 activations that round if it's heroic, and just be like, yeah, you're twice as bad for twice as long. Or, oh yes, there's 8 objectives around the map. You might have extra actions, but it would be better if you just had one guy go from the start and go left instead of everyone else going right, and then also having to go back left.
Yep.
So, yeah, I think they should have gone for that. They didn't want to deal with the extra management of an extra hero. But the other thing that makes having that extra hero good is in each mission, the heroes get credits per hero. So if you're doing a 3 hero game, you get maybe 300 credits at the end of the mission. But if it would have been 4 heroes, you get 400. And your donkey mule is probably not going to do any damage, and you want to build them based on their abilities, their support powers. So you don't really need to buy them items. So throughout a campaign that adds up to an extra 500, 1,000, something like that gold, you could use on your main heroes to make them even stronger.
Yeah, I
And they
hadn't
can spend less actions wasted on objectives,
I hadn't
actions using those items. Go ahead.
yeah, I hadn't thought about that really until you had mentioned that in that thread, that like, because the idea is that you're getting credits per hero because the game expects you to divvy up the resources evenly between each hero, right? But you made a good point that like there's heroes that are support heroes that you don't give them a weapon, you don't buy them armor, you just have them do their thing, and you are buying everything else for the other 3 heroes. So in that case, yeah, it actually does shortchange your money that you would get, and your heroes end up being weaker than they would be, and then compared to a four-player game, which is really interesting. Um, I should mention, I think we didn't mention it, but the for um, campaigns, there is a campaign in addition to the core box campaign. There is one campaign in each of the expansion boxes. Um, and there are three full-length campaigns, although Heart of the Empire is like slightly shorter than a normal one. And then there's three mini campaigns, and a mini campaign is 4 missions. Although in some cases you can expand it. I know Bespin Gambit you can expand to 5 missions, and Tyrants of Lothal you can expand to 7 missions by including the figure packs that are associated with those boxes. Um, and each campaign does have branching mission routes. So, like, if you play a campaign a second time, there's often missions that were unplayed that you can play instead. And I do actually recommend to people, like, if you've already played a campaign and usually it's based on whether you win or lose a mission, which mission you play next. I usually tell people, like, regardless of whether you win or lose, you should play the mission you didn't play last time, because otherwise, like, what's the
Hmm.
point? Like, what's the
Yeah.
point of replaying this campaign if you're just going to play the same missions again?
Yeah, I've recently, the one I was running was Heart of the Empire. I was also concurrently a rebel in a Heart of the Empire campaign. And if I would be down to do one more Heart of the Empire campaign on either side, but I would definitely say, hey, we're gonna run through these 5 missions I haven't done yet. So I've already seen everything else this game has in this expansion.
Yep. Okay, let's move on to the next and final kind of official game type, which is the Legends of the Alliance app campaign. And I'm pulling up the image here. But yeah, so this is an app that was released by Fantasy Flight Games, um, and it's available for everything. So it's available on Steam and on iOS, right? And I think Android as well.
Mhm. I think it's just everywhere.
Yeah, it's
Free
pretty much
game.
everywhere. And this is kind of a different way to play. It's a How do I explain this? It's pure co-op, so there's no Empire player. The app handles all of the activations, and it does it through these little, like, it has special rules for how to move and activate the Imperial figures, and it gives you instructions on what to do, but it doesn't track their movement on the table. So it's not like a video game, really. It's more like you have to keep track of everything on the table physically, and then the app kind of tells you what the mission parameters are, and then it tells you, like, here's the Imperial figure you should activate next, and here's what they should do. But you have to figure out based on the instructions, like, what exactly that means they're supposed to do. Um,
Which there are rules for.
yeah, and there's rules for it. It tells you, like, what engage means. It tells you how it works. They do move differently than campaign, so a lot of the rules are different than regular campaign. In order to give the Empire figures a bit more of an advantage, because of course they're not being controlled by an intelligent human. It's a very rudimentary, like, AI. It's not real AI, right? It's like, what do you call that? Not a formula,
Algorithm.
yeah, algorithm. Thank you. It's just a very simple algorithm that they're
Yeah.
following. And then the other thing that's different is that the campaign is its own thing. It's based around the core box campaign and then the 2 expansion campaigns, like, thematically, but it's not the same missions. It doesn't use the campaign books missions. It uses its own missions designed for the app campaign. It
Right.
doesn't. Oh, sorry. Go ahead.
Yeah, I was just gonna get into, my experience with it. This is basically the game mode that got us back into the game after dropping it for a few years. I think we last played and kind of got 8 missions into a campaign and then dropped it, because people didn't like how much it felt like it was against the rebels at that point. I think I was running that one as well. But a couple years later, we're like, oh, here's a co-op version. It'll run the enemy for us. Let's give this a shot. It was very accessible. It's the official way to do it. And it does make a lot of use of the technology of hidden information. Like the app has all this stuff pre-programmed, and until you've encountered it, it can show you hidden information and have more text inside of it than you can typically see in a single page of a mission loadout on the main campaign game. And this was a very cool way to get back into the game, but these campaigns are also a lot shorter. They only run about 5 missions each of the 3 campaigns that are available.
Yeah, which is actually kind of perfect in my opinion. Like, it's kind of the perfect game length.
Yeah. So the specific reason I chose to run Heart of the Empire is because I know that people were going to start getting disenfranchised after around 8 missions, and that kind of happened quicker in my most recent case, but we got to the end, which was good. But Legends of the Alliance, it's 5 missions. They do tend to seem to go on longer, though. I would say that because they kind of throw everything against the wall at you. They kind of see how much you can take with the algorithm and then just throw it all at you.
Yeah, that's true. You're also doing a lot of busy work managing the app, um, and then it kind of like it's a lot more work than you realize it will be. Um,
Hmm.
and
Yeah, definitely.
you kind of have to like. So for me, I mean, it's kind of it's almost easier for me to just play against myself in the regular campaign. But the app is a lot of fun when you have people to play with. I think it's a really good co-op experience, and it removes that competition, like competitive incentive, and it removes that ambiguity of like, well, we're playing a competitive game, but I don't want to like hurt your feelings, so I'm gonna pull my punches. Like, there's none of that. You can just be like, I'm playing against the computer. Let's mess up this computer. Let's mess up the empire. Let's play as hard as we
Yes.
can, exploit as much as we can. Like, let's do it. And I like that a lot more. Um,
The game even has a high score based on how many units you defeat. It has a hard mode based on, I think they just throw more units at you than you kind of typically be expected to handle.
yep. And it also has like you can pick up allies, which is nice. You can customize it based on your collection, so like it won't spawn things that you don't own physically. Although annoyingly, you can't turn off villains that are in the box expansions, which I find annoying because that means if you tick Jabba's realm, you're gonna have Jabba like just randomly appearing next to other soldiers sometimes. And similar for like Palpatine, if you check off Heart of the Empire, like he'll just randomly show up and be like, "Mahaha, I'm here to mess up your day," and it's kind of takes you out of the moment sometimes, but it's still fun.
Yeah, definitely so fun.
And I should say there are 2 expansion campaigns available for the app, which is Heart of the Empire. No, no, not Heart of the Empire.
No, it's Return to Hoth.
Return to Hoth and Jabba's Realm, right?
Right.
Jabba's
Right.
Realm was actually pretty excellent. Like, I really liked the story they made up for that one and the way they handled the branching missions. I think that was actually my favorite of the app campaigns.
I think Jabba's is the one that we've gotten a mission or two into, but it's the only one we haven't really played through. But it does look exciting to jump back into soon.
Yeah, so that's a good way to play co-op, and it's still an official. We're still in the land of official game modes. So again, you can
It
find.
also it
Mhm.
also changes your progression. That is a good note, though. Um, like I think instead of just building up all your XP and getting a 4 XP card 2 missions in, you have to each mission win or lose, you get like one new one new XP card from the next tier of XP cards. Right? So you beat mission 1, you can get one single XP card. You beat mission 2, you can pick the other 1 XP card or any 2 XP card you want. And I think that does change the way a lot of the heroes play. There's a lot of balance change in this version of the game, I would say.
Yes, which it helps because I think if you could just rush to your 4 XP like you do in a regular campaign, it would be pretty broken and easy to
Yeah.
win. I should mention again, there is special rules for the app campaign, so you need to read the rule book for the app campaign. You can do that. There's a tutorial mission too, but you really want to have this rulebook PDF open so you can reference what the different Imperial commands mean for the AI, as well as like how things work differently. Like stun works differently in the app.
It's done dirty.
Huh?
They did stun pretty dirty.
Yeah, but it's just so that it doesn't cripple
Yeah,
the AI. A lot of it's just to give the AI an advantage, because otherwise it would just be too easy to
right,
cripple the AI
right.
with different exploits. So yeah, I think that does it for the app campaign. Next up we have one last official game mode, which is the raid mode. So let me pull this up. So the raid mode is similar to like horde mode in a video game, or like what was it, firefight in Halo for people who played first-person shooters. It's basically you start on a map and then just hordes of enemies appear, um, and kind of you have like an objective that you're trying to do, but it's mostly just like survive the enemies that come in. It's kind of like a one-off mission, like campaign mission, basically. I'm trying to find a good
Mm.
picture, but here we go from the FFG article. But yeah, there's currently two maps, and there's only going to be two maps because, of course, they're not making any new content for this game. Um, but one of them you have 3 XP total, or you can take a 1 XP, a 2 XP, and a 3 XP, and you get credits and you get to buy from the armory. And the other one you can go up to 4 XP. Um, and yeah, it's pretty fun. What did you have you played raid mode?
I have not. I just happen to remember it because this is a part of that same FFG app,
There.
right?
Yeah,
Or is
it's
there a in-person version of this too, or is that just in the
no,
app?
it's on the app. So, um, trying to pull up some footage of the raid mode in action. So here you can kind of see I'm playing raid in one of my old videos, and it's like a high score base game. So unlike those other game modes I talked about, it's not endless waves of enemies. It's like one set. And you have enemies spawning over like I think 6 rounds. I think it lasts 6 rounds, or something like that, or until you win. I don't know. Uh, I don't remember, but the idea is like you have all these objectives all over the board, and you get points for each figure you defeat, each like Imperial figure you kill, and then you also get points for any of the objectives that you manage to score. And then at the end you get a rating based on your how you did. So you get like C to A ranking, or no, excuse me, it's gold, platinum, gold, silver, bronze. Um, and so some heroes are a little bit better at farming the objectives, which is really how you get a S or a platinum rank, is you need to farm. Um, but yeah, you can see on the top, it uses the same interface as the app campaign, and it uses the same rules, but it's just instead of like continuous multiple missions, you're just playing a one-off big mission.
Mhm.
So
It
it's go ahead.
it does appear, looking at the FFG site, these missions are made in ways that require you to have two expansions to play either of the maps.
Yeah, so they actually used the expansions that were not used for the Legends of the Alliance
Mhm.
campaign. So they used Hoth and Jabba, right? So the raid maps use the remaining ones. So I think one is Bespin and Tyrants of Lothal, and
Mhm.
the other one uses Twin Shadows and Heart of the Empire.
Right.
So it's kind of neat how they mix the map tiles. It's something they normally don't do with expansions.
I mean, for me, I feel like that's more of a negative as someone who doesn't have Twin Shadows or Bespin Gambit.
Oh, so you can't play either. They do. There, I think the maps are available online as
That's
printable.
true.
They
That's
were
true.
supposed to release official playmats, but they never did. Although some people claim they have gotten them. You really can't
Hmm.
find them out in the wild. They were not really widely released before the game got shut down. Um, but yeah, that's fun. It's again, it's like a one-off app campaign, just one mission. And you do get to focus more on just killing stuff, which is like if that's your jam, if you don't really like being forced to like move through objectives and leave enemies on the table, the whole idea of raid is like you gotta kill stuff. So if you want to murder hobo it up in your Imperial Assault campaign games, raid mode is a fun option.
I think that's exactly what we could use. Some murder hoboing in our
Some
games.
people just really like it, right? Like some people, a lot of complaints you see online is like, I don't like that there's objectives and I have to leave enemies alive. Like, I just want to kill all the enemies and then we lose because the time runs out. So if that's
Yeah.
your thing, like, I think raid mode, because I don't think there is a time limit. I think it's like you have to kill all the enemies. I think.
I I'm not sure. Um, but I do know that it is, kill all enemies, which is nice.
Because I remember
For
now what happens is if you take too long, as the turn count goes up, they start doing these like nasty events to you. Like these
mm,
random events start happening that like weaken all your figures and you take all your figures take 2 strain, or like the enemies all become focused or something like that.
and that's Legends of the Alliance too, I think, in a nutshell. There's no hard turn limit. You just start getting these events if you start taking too long.
That's true. Yeah, okay. Yeah, so that's right. Okay, so that's raid mode. And now we're going to move into some of the fan-made campaign variants. So the first one we have is called RAIV. So that is the Red Jack's Automated Emperor variant or Automated Imperial variant. So this is like one of the early, even before the app campaign, attempts to create a co-op mode for campaign that removes the need for an Empire player. This is purely print and play, although there are some digital aids that were made for this. So the difference between the RAEV and the RAIV, and they're made by the same guy, and I don't think he's updated in a long time. Although I think somebody maybe took over the reins, but I haven't seen anything more recent than 2019. So the RAEV is a rule system that is meant to simulate the regular campaign as close as possible, but replace all of the Emperor human actions with cards off the deck that tell you what to do. And so it's like you have this deck of cards that represents the Emperor, and then for like activations and abilities, like off of command not command cards, class cards and agenda cards, they're all laid out in a random order, and then you go through them left to right. So again, like uh, why is that algorithm? It's very algorithmic in that way.
Hmm.
But then there's randomness provided by the action deck, which will then tell you like target this rebel with during this activation, and then use these abilities. So that's a way to sit if you want to have all the Imperial class decks and agenda cards in play, and it tells you how to like buy class cards and buy agenda cards for the Imperial player. But it's not. There's no strategic thought behind all that. It's just random with a bit of a buff in how strong they are to compensate. So you're not really playing against a smart entity. You're just playing against randomness. The other one is, in my opinion, slightly better. The Imperial variant. This creates more of a custom campaign rule set to give you a co-op mode. It's very similar to what they did for Legends of the Alliance. Instead of having trying to like apply this randomness to each figure, instead what they do is they have specific AI cards protocols for each unit type that tells you how to activate them when they do activate, and then it does like a random event each round that is like again, a negative for the rebels and makes things a little more challenging. It does away with all the class cards for the Empire as well as all the agenda cards. It replaces those with those random events, and it has rules for how to activate the different units. And so it's basically just a way to kind of have a goldfish, right? I think they call it goldfishing. You're playing against a goldfish in a bowl, who is then just doing the rudimentary activations as someone who wants to play usually solo or co-op. Um, and the advantage of this over the Legends of the Alliance is that Legends of the Alliance needs a digital, you need a digital device running. This is print and play. It's all paper, so you don't have to have any kind of device going if that is something you don't like. Do you have any experience with this, Leslie, before I go on?
Yeah, I do actually own a set of the ones that just they don't replace all of the AI on what they do. The ones that just are like do your ability, then do your action, then do your move, and attack the rebel player with the green token because they assign colors to each hero to determine who becomes the priority.
Yeah.
I do get confused between the RAEV and the RAIV acronym, but
So, so the one you're
yeah, I
just
have.
yeah, that's
What's that?
RAEV. That's the RAEV
RAEV.
one.
Yep. Yep. So I have done I think a full campaign in RAEV, and we were newer at the time, and I think if you're not someone who is in depth with knowledge on the system of IA, it can be, a competent enough enemy for you. There is the issue of getting things printed out. My friend used to own the collection of the game, and then when I bought it from him, I acquired that deck as well, so I didn't have to worry about that. But it is a lot of cards, but it was a lot of fun to not know what the opponent was going to do next round because they're going to draw a card and it's going to say either blitz, they're going to do 20 things, or yeah, we're going to attack green, which is your guy that has 2 health and finish her off. Or we're going to attack the full health guy and get him to half health, but it's all randomized, right? And it was quite a lot of fun for 2 people at the table, which is what we had, each playing a hero, I think, or
Yeah,
two.
yeah, I could see this being like good if you needed a co-op, but I was looking for solo play at the time, and I just found the rules so confusing when I tried to do this. I printed out a set too for myself, and I just found the rules to be so confusing, and like a lot of the times I was ended up having to improvise on behalf of the Imperial player anyway. So I'm like, I'm just playing against myself anyway. I just might as well just play both sides, which is what I ended up doing for quite a while between real campaigns with actual people, just so I could try out all the heroes and the missions and stuff. And I found that was easier than trying to do this. But the app campaign really, um, I mean, the advantage of the app campaign of this over the app campaign is you actually get to play like campaign book missions rather than the just for the app missions. So this is a way to do that to get to experience those missions, but without playing against yourself.
Right.
Um, but we're gonna move on to the next option, which I think really has kind of made this a bit obsolete, in my opinion.
Yeah, and I think this is our last option for the topic.
Yeah. There is. I should mention there is some online tools like this Event Helper, which I think um, really helps you to not have to print out. And I actually think, does this replace all the cards? This Event Deck Helper?
Are we talking about the web app for our RAIV?
Yeah, the one that you shared with me.
Right. So, yeah, whoever took up the post did add cards and everything up to, I mean, everything that was released for Fantasy Flight. I think the original Red Jack version only went up to like Bespin Gambit or Twin Shadows. But the new guy that kind of runs this project made a web app, and it basically makes it so that you don't need to print the cards at all. You just run it through a web app. It shows you everything you need.
But I think you need to still have the AI cards because I don't see them here. But yeah, here you can see on the if you're watching on YouTube, you can see some of these event cards that will pop up. to kind of ruin your day and make things a little harder.
Well, maybe if we have the link or the guy's name, people can look that up
I mean,
and see whether it includes everything. Because I think it did from what I was reviewing a video on yesterday.
they're all here in the Google Drive, and I'll post a link to this in the to
Yeah.
the show description. I can't open it though because there's a zip file, so we'll do that later. Or yeah. Oh wait, here is this the AIs? Imperial AI sheets. Oh, but I can't. Yeah, I'd have to download this to open them, so that's okay.
Yeah, I do
Um,
see them in the mission helper at some point in the video I sent you earlier. So they do appear to be
oh,
there.
okay, okay. Well, yeah, you can definitely check that out if you're interested in doing that. But we now have this tool, which is the Imperial Commander app, and this is a custom fan-made app. Came out like maybe a year ago or a year and a half ago, I think. And this is this is pretty awesome. So this is I'm gonna play their little video on their YouTube channel while I talk. But this is a way to basically play the campaign books, so all the missions in the campaign books, but with the Legends of the Alliance app campaign rules and AI controlling the Imperial figures. So you get to play like a real campaign, and also you still use all the regular real rules, right, for XP for the heroes and stuff, and for the Empire as well. I think you end up doing using the actual class cards. But there's actually two versions of this. So what I'm showing now, this is like kind of just like RAEV, RAIV, but turned into an app. So you still are doing all of the like full Emperor player has like Imperial class cards, Imperial agenda, and you're playing through an actual campaign. But then the computer manages the activations and the instructions for the Imperial figures. Um, so that's one way to do this. And then they recently introduced a new game mode called what is it, Saga, and that is like more of a full integration of the app campaign rules onto the regular campaign missions. And so they show you, here you go. So they actually have implemented all of the missions as maps into the app. And this is not the Legends of the Alliance app you guys are looking at on the video. This is Imperial Commander. They've actually implemented like three-dimensional map. They give you all the instructions in the app for like the mission, and they like animate all of it, and it's just like Legends of the Alliance, but it's for the actual campaign missions, like from the book. And so, and it's pretty much, I'm pretty sure this is free, totally free to download. It's only available for Windows right now, but it's a pretty amazing project that these guys have put together.
Have you tinkered with either of the modes?
So I've played around with the app. I haven't done a full playthrough like with a campaign mission. I would love to. I tend to. I definitely want to like do it for a video. I think people would enjoy seeing that. Oh, you guys are looking at now on the video. It does also has a full mission editor, so you can create your own custom missions in the app and then play them with the computer controlling the Empire, which is again also like amazing. And then I think just
Is it
recently they
cool?
had an update. Well, never mind. That's in the community update already. So, but it does have a full campaign tracker too, so you can track all your items and XP and stuff in this app now.
So,
Yeah, go ahead.
what would you suggest between the two modes, Classic and Saga?
Ooh, I'm definitely more interested in Saga mode. I have played. I played, I think, like half a mission with the classic mode, and I found it just not quite. It was kind of confusing. Like I was lacking some clarity, and I feel like the Saga mode would be more like do this, set up this, place this here, deploy these guys here. Because like in this classic mode, you're having to look at the book mostly for what to
Mm-hmm.
do, and then
Mm-hmm.
the app is all it's doing is like, okay, here's who you should activate next, and here's what they should do. Um, and this saga mode just looks it is very similar to the app campaign in terms of the UI, but you're playing the actual mission. I think he said I was reading their thread in BGG, and I'll link to all of this, of course, in the show notes. But he mentioned he did change a couple, like some small things to make them more app friendly in the saga mode. So I think that's also going to be like more of a curated experience. But like there on the video you saw there, that was like the finale from Twin Shadows being played. Yeah, it looks really interesting.
Nice. I think you can also just play missions in any order you want. I'm sure you mentioned earlier that there's a new update for campaign tracking, but the default way to play is to just run whatever missions you want and tell the app what parameters you're going in with, what heroes, what XP, what credits, what threat level.
Yep, exactly. That's the classic mode. You tell it, they have all the missions implemented from all of the core box and campaign. Let's see if I can find it here. Yeah, here on the setup mode. So you tell it up on the top left there, you tell it what mission are you playing, um, how much, what's the threat level, what cards does the Imperial have, etc. And then during the mission, you can like modify like the threat level freely. It has different difficulty levels. I don't know what the adaptive difficulty is, and you know what? I really want to. I'm probably gonna at some point try to invite the guy who makes this because they're still regularly updating it. I will definitely
Hmm.
try to get one of these guys to come on the podcast and talk about this more in depth because I am not doing this app any sort of justice with all of the work that they put into it and how it works. They would be able to do a much better job like explaining how it all works and going into more detail. But the thing to know is that this exists, and if you are looking for a way to play the full campaign missions from all the campaign books, that's not just the 3 campaigns in the official app, this is like far and away number one, your best way to do it if you have Windows.
Right. Right. Yeah, that sounds great. Um, yeah, I guess Windows is the only holdup here, but I would just say that if that seems kind of like an issue, you can always get an HDMI cable, hook up a laptop or something to a TV, try and make that work. That's what I've done before.
Yeah, I mean, if you're a gamer and you have a Mac, I'm sure you figured out how to use a Windows emulator at this point.
Yeah. Yeah. I'm just thinking I know a lot of people will use their phones or tablets for helper apps, but you can always figure out a way to do it with your TV.
Yep. So, yeah, I think we kind of covered everything at this point. Do,
Yeah,
do we have any other modes we need to talk about or anything we missed?
I think that's it. I just need to keep in the back of my head the Hunger Games. That sounds amazing.
Yeah, if I can find the link to that, I'll post it, but I don't remember where. I think David Gow posted it somewhere. But yeah, so that's the topic. Stick around for a little bit. If you're listening, I am going to talk a little bit about my thoughts on the new Star Wars show Andor on Disney Plus. I'm gonna record that separately, and then I know Wesley, you haven't seen it yet, right?
No, it's only been out for a day or so. I have not had a chance to run through that yet.
Okay. Well, on a future episode, we can get your thoughts on it too. I'll be interested to hear what you think about it. But for everybody else, thanks for watching. And Wesley, did you want to plug anything before we go?
I have a YouTube channel.
And I will
I'll probably just say that every week.
post the link to that in the video description.
Awesome.
All right, thanks
All
everybody
right.
for listening and watching if you're on YouTube, and we will catch you later. Peace out.
Stay frosty.
All right, so I am recording this a little after the main recording for the episode, and I did want to just talk kind of briefly about the new show on Disney Plus, which is called Andor, which I'm sure a lot of you have heard about. It's the new TV show that is sort of a origin story for Cassian Andor, the character from Rogue One, and I am gonna do this as a no spoiler review. So because I think there's some people who are hesitant or have maybe been burned a couple times now on Disney Plus Star Wars content. So I actually do want to do this as a spoiler-free review so that you can listen to this and then go and watch it. And if you're already going to watch it and you don't want to get spoiled at all, it is difficult to talk about a show without kind of spoiling it a little bit. I mean, you'll be watching it and thinking about what I've said. So if you don't want to have my voice in your head while you're watching it, you can turn this off and then watch it and then come back and listen to my take. But if you are hesitant or you're not sure, or maybe you have given the first episode a try and you're kind of not feeling it, I want you to listen to this so you can kind of give it a shot. Because here's the thing, Andor, this show is, I'm just gonna say it's great. It's fantastic. I mean, we've only gotten 3 episodes so far. That's true. So I can't speak to the quality of the entire show, but the 3 episodes we've gotten so far has just kind of been this perfect like package. It almost makes this like movie, it's like a film. I mean, these 3 episodes really come together so nicely as this sort of 3-act narrative. Um, and there's a payoff at the end. I mean, the third episode, there is a payoff for the things that kick things off in the first episode, and then there's a slow burn in the second episode that then slowly builds up into the events of the third episode. It's like there's a climax. Basically, it's a start off, build up, climax at the end. It's like this really nice 3-act structure, like I said, and it is deliberately paced. I do want to say that. I've seen a lot of people talking about how it's slow, and some people even saying it's boring. But I think if you're paying attention, because it is kind of a quiet show too, it's not the type of show that like is hitting you with jokes and exposition, and like it doesn't spoon feed you anything really. It shows you what's happening, and then it expects you to figure out what's going on, but it's not like stopping to hold your hand, and which is it's different. It's a big difference from even from the Mandalorian. Like Mandalorian was a quiet show too, where you had to kind of watch what was going on, but then it would stop and somebody like Grief Cargo would come in and feed you all of the exposition of what's going on, and it just basically explain the story to you, and then you can watch it. And the show doesn't do that. It's just the story is happening in front of you, and you have to see it unfold, which is different, but it's so refreshing. Um, and it's paced deliberately. It's not like there's nothing happening. It's not like they're just doing things for the sake of. It's not like a slice of life type of thing. Like every scene is either building up Cassian's character, but usually it's building up Cassian as a character and all the background characters and moving the plot forward. It's like this is who Cassian is, but also look, he's doing something. He's talking to someone. He has a goal that he's trying to fulfill, and it's showing you the steps he's taking to fulfilling that goal. It also is showing you the bad guy's goal. It's showing you. I mean, they're the bad guys in that they're in the antagonists, but in this show, at least in these episodes, I can't speak again to what they're going to be like in the future episodes, because I believe there are characters on the antagonist side that have been revealed in the trailers that have not shown up in the show yet. So, but they have like real motivations. They have real goals, and they're realistic, and they're understandable, and they're like you can look at them and be like, yeah, if I was in their shoes, if I had that job, like I might feel the same way. I might be motivated by the same reasons. And it's so nice to not just have the same like empire, uh doesn't care about its underlings, doesn't care about its lower tiers, and everybody's just fighting to impress the big boss and to get the promotion. Like that's what you see in every Star Wars media when they portray the Empire, is just a bunch of lackeys and people groveling for promotions and to impress, the Emperor or the Darth or whoever is the high up. I mean, we saw that in Obi-Wan with the Inquisitors. That's all they were doing, was bickering over who gets to hold Darth Vader's hand, and that's what you always see. And that's not what you see in this, and it's pretty amazing. Honestly, I didn't even think you could portray. It's not technically the Empire, but it's an Empire-like entity. I didn't even think you could portray them that way. And I really hope that we continue to see that when we see the Empire proper in the future episodes. But just, I mean, it's not really a spoiler, but it's like a security force that reports to the Empire, but it's kind of its own entity. But it's very imperialistic. I mean, they've got a lot of the same infrastructure. But anyway, again, I don't want to get too much into details, and I don't want to spoil anything. But the both characters on both sides are both driven by real motivations, and the same is true for Cassian, in that like he is driven by something real, and it's not just I want to rebel or I hate the Empire, which again is so nice because even in Rogue One, which this is based off of, like that was my biggest gripe with Rogue One, was that what's her name, Jyn Erso, she has no motivation. She has nothing motivating her other than I want to live, I want to be free, I want to rebel. I rebel. Like, that's such a meh. But Cassian actually has something he's looking for. And he actually has something personal to him that has nothing to do with the Empire or the rebellion that he is trying to accomplish. And that is driving his character. But then he has to navigate how that goal brings him into contact with all these other forces. And it makes it really interesting and really fun to watch how he does that. I want to talk about how the show looks. The show looks amazing. God, it's so nice to see like actual locations being presented. I mean, the volume was cool in The Mandalorian, but my God, did Book of Boba and Obi-Wan look so cheap. I feel like they over relied on it, and now that they're actually in these real places, it looks like a film. It looks like they're like being in the movie theater, seeing it looks like Rogue One, but like 5 or 10 times better than Rogue One. So that's awesome. The acting is fantastic. The writing is like so strange, but it's strange in a way that it's like this feels like if you ever have ever traveled outside of your native country and you talk to people from another country, but like in their environment, not as them being tourists in your country, it feels kind of like that. It feels like when you are interacting with locals in a different environment that you're not familiar with, and I think they really nailed that. It might sound weird to people who maybe haven't done that, who haven't traveled, and are like, "Why are they talking like that?" But I thought it sounded really cool, and it really like it grounds everything, and I think that's why I really like this show. Is it feels very real, like it doesn't feel like Star Wars. That's the other thing, and normally that's something I would criticize a Star Wars show. Like, if you don't feel like Star Wars, why are you taking the name? But it occupies the universe really well. Um, and it feels like if Star Wars were a real universe, this is like what it would be like, and how it would be for real people actually living in this universe and trying to navigate all of the political issues and you know scarcity issues and logistics that are presented by by you know and I just find it really interesting, and I didn't think I was going to gush about this show when I started talking about it, but it's refreshing. I mean, Book of Boba was really hard, and then I really wanted Obi-Wan to be good, and it was in some cases, but you could tell that something went wrong in the production on Obi-Wan. It became something that it had not originally been designed to be, but it got twisted into being something else. And you can tell that Andor is exactly what it was designed to be from start to finish, and that they put the time in, they put the money in, there was nobody rushing them to get it out early or turn it into a 12 episode season when it was only supposed to be a 3 episode season. It feels like they're like, oh, Andor, whatever, do whatever you want. We don't care. We're gonna torture this Obi-Wan and Boba Fett shows until they're like beyond recognition. But you guys do whatever you want, and I think it really benefited from whatever lack of executive meddling allowed it to be what it wanted to be. I'm not saying there's not bad things. The pacing can be a little slow, especially in the second episode, but it's in service of creating that atmosphere. But if you're not, I mean, that's not even a bad thing though, right? And the other thing I really like about the show is that it's a Star Wars show for adults, but kids can watch it. It's not, which is something that like you should never do to a Star Wars show, right? Like you never ever want to see them make like an NC-17 like Game of Thrones level, Sopranos level of violence and gratuity in a Star Wars property, because that is not what Star Wars is. Star Wars needs to be kid friendly. This show is kid tolerant. Like you can show this to your 9-year-old and they they'd be fine. You would not traumatize them like you would if you showed them especially a specific scenes from Game of Thrones or something. But they also probably won't get what's going on 100% because there's a lot of subtext, there's a lot of like lived knowledge that you have to have just watching what's going on. They won't get a lot of the emotional stuff too that's happening, and I like that. I like that it's a show. They managed to make a Star Wars show for adults without resorting to just shock factor and gratuity like you see on shows like The Boys, and other shows like that. Which by the way, I love those shows, but I recognize there's a lot of shock factor, and you could not show this to kids because it would scar them, for at least for a decent amount of time. So, it's great to have a Star Wars show on TV to look forward to. I can't wait to see what's going to happen with the future parts. We haven't even gotten to. I mean, I don't know if this is a spoiler, but we haven't even gotten to Coruscant yet. Like, and it's going to be a long season. There's a lot of episodes, 12 episodes. That's more than usually. We've been getting like 8 episode seasons, and so that show has room to grow and room to breathe. And there's going to be 2 seasons, and that's great. So, if you're watching it and you are bored or you think it's too slow, I would say stick it out, get to the third episode, watch all 3, and then decide if you like it or not. And also like pay attention more. I think unfortunately Star Wars has fallen into this thing where they just kind of exposition dump the story onto you in a talking scene so that they can get to the guns and the lightsabers. But in this show it doesn't do that. You have to the action and the dialogue is the plot. It's not like here's the plot in an exposition, now let's go shoot stuff. It's like it's all happening, and you kind of have to watch it happen and watch it unfold and be part of the story with the characters rather than know the story up front and then watch action, which is just really nice. And so that's what I had to say about Andor, and thanks guys for listening, and I hope people give it a chance, and I hope it continues to impress me the way it has with these first 3 episodes. Alright, thanks for listening.